Since changing the name of the Eclectic Americana Friday morning drive time radio show on January 20th, 1989 to the Bushwhackers Breakfast Club, the DJs in the collective have strived to entertain and inform our listeners. Airing from 6 to 9 a.m. Pacific at KZSC 88.1 FM in Santa Cruz, California, the Bushwhackers usually have 2 interviews a week, each airing for about half an hour. We're not afraid to ask questions or admit that we don't know something, and we don't mind taking deep dives or following a tangent as we get into how sausage is made in local, county, or state politics, or learning about things going on in our community, or discussions with artists. Our interviews are not scripted and are produced by myself, Dangerous Dan Orange. To the guy sitting across from us next to Kaos here in the air room, I can say, good morning, KZSC. You're on the air.
Good morning.
Dave Reid, Santa Cruz County Office of Response, Recovery, and Resilience. Are you the whole office, or are you the boss?
I'm definitely not the whole office. I'm the director of our small but mighty team. We've got a team of 4 of us working in our office together.
Okay, and since Kalamity Kyle just announced that the trifecta, jackknifed big rig, debris in the roadway, and snow at the summit, that he was reporting that Highway 17 was closed, but you saw people heading up Highway 17 and wondering, well, you might be sitting there for a while.
Yeah, I think people are trying to take the back roads, and probably not advisable.
Okay, well, what would the Office of Response, Recovery, and Resilience do in a situation like this? Or is this kind of more kind of run-of-the-mill mundane stuff that you don't really worry about?
No, definitely. Our office, the first R, response, is really around emergency preparedness and disaster response. And this weather conditions right now is certainly alarming. We don't get a lot of snow in this neck of the woods, for sure.
Yeah, there was snow at Seabright Beach yesterday. Yes. And a friend sent me a photo of snow in Corralitos. So, yeah, and that there are more coming in.
Yeah. We're encouraging folks to stay home and work from home or have a snow day. You don't get those a lot in Santa Cruz County.
We talked about that in the last break because, back in the day, pre-pandemic, you could take a snow day and just, go hang out at the beach and maybe go for a jog or something, go mountain biking up in the ranch, Wilder Ranch. But no, at post-pandemic with Zoom and smartphones, it's tough to take a snow day.
Work follows you.
Would your boss let you take a snow day?
I work kind of all the time, or at least have one ear to the news and to the weather and to the conditions, but try and get a break every once in a while.
So who is your boss?
I work in the county administrative office at the county. So my boss is the CAO and the assistant CAO at the county.
What does the A in CAO? Chief Officer?
County Administrative Officer.
Okay.
Assistant County Administrative Officer.
And who would that be?
Carlos Palacios, Elisa Benson, and Nicole Coburn.
There we go. Okay, so where we normally start, Dave, is what brought you to Santa Cruz and when did you get here?
I came in September of 1995 to UC Santa Cruz to become a slug, and I've been here ever since. I studied geology, and then I got a master's in coastal geology here from Gary Griggs, and love this place. So it's pretty obvious once you get here, especially as a student, it's a magical place, and why would you want to leave?
So speaking of Gary Griggs, back in the 70s when they were talking about rebuilding that berm down in Seacliff with, timbers and whatnot, and Gary went to the county and said, this is a really bad idea. Next big storm, it's just going to take this out. And they built it anyway, millions of dollars. Next big storm that came in from the south, took it out, built it again. That one went away. And so from the county office of, and maybe this gets to the last R, resilience, from the county office of response, recovery, and resilience, can you put a word in with the soups when they're looking at spending stupid money that's just going to be taken out again, and our tax dollars are just going to have to do it again in the next couple of years?
Well, yeah, I think certainly we've learned a lot over the years. The Coastal Commission doesn't really support a lot of frivolous spending on coastal armoring and protection these days. So I don't think we're going to be in a place where we're going to be investing a lot of money on infrastructure that would not be resilient. The key is resilient.
With the exception of Westcliff, of course.
Well,
Because that's a third rail in Santa Cruz.
Yeah, so Westcliff is in the city, so I don't have any control over Westcliff, but I know that the Coastal Commission and the city are working closely to try and find a managed and mitigated retreat strategy. But it's an interesting spot, right? The ocean wants to take that section of the cliff back, and it's a beautiful scenic walkway, but perhaps it becomes just one lane. Who knows?
So 1995, geology major, UC Santa Cruz. What college did you live?
I was down at Cowell.
Okay.
Because at the time, it was the closest, it is still, it's the closest college to the pool. So I was a swimmer here at UC Santa Cruz. I had to roll out of bed and walk down the hill to the pool every morning to swim at the crack of dawn. But I always said there's no better place to swim in the country. I got to watch the sunrise every day. It's probably, in my opinion, the most spectacular place to swim in the country because you have this amazing view.
And did you go from a master's degree in coastal geology directly to the county?
No, definitely a circuitous path. I worked as a researcher for the U.S. Geological Survey for a number of years here at the Coastal Marine Center. So we've got amazing researchers with the GS here in town. I worked for them for a while, worked for some private consulting firms, and then found my way to the county in 2007.
So the USGS moved their entire Pacific Marine branch from Palo Alto to Santa Cruz and kind of took over like the western half of the Wrigley building, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
Okay. So when did you start at the county?
I started in 2007 with the county in their public works department, and then navigated a little bit of time in the redevelopment agency before that disappeared in 2011. And then I spent 8 years in Supervisor John Leopold's office as one of his analysts, working on local politics issues, local land use, and environmental issues.
John Leopold, now head of the Arhoolie nonprofit division, was on Bushwhackers here last year talking about what he's doing post supervisory. So, did the county, was it climate change or some big storm damage, landslides that kicked off the county creating this Office of Response, Recovery, and Resilience?
Great question. Yeah, definitely. The county had anticipated creating a climate action manager position, and then the pandemic hit, and then we had the most significant wildfire in our recorded history in 2020, the CZU Lightning Complex fire. And in the aftermath of that fire, the board gave direction to staff to create an office that focused on both the immediate emergencies response, the recovery from those emergencies, and in that case, the recovery from the fire, and then thinking about climate change resilience. And it's certainly been a busy few years for the office being created in late 2020, and now here we are in 2023.
Now, Dave, we know that you've probably had a lot of less than average, less than normal days recently with the storms that have been barraging Santa Cruz, and of course, even before that, the CZU Lightning Complex fire, and responding to that, and in any capacity that you did. What is an average day in the office look like? Like what does Dave do when he goes to work?
Well, as I said, I have a great team. So we're working on a lot of different things. Last year, one of my staff members, Tatiana Brennan, was focusing on our climate action and adaptation plan. So that was the county's first update since 2013 of our strategy to address climate change. So, days could include working on elements of that or supporting that effort. And then preparedness is an ongoing thing, right? You spend half the year these days worrying about wildfire, and it appears as though we'll spend probably not half, maybe a third, since our rainy seasons are so short. We'll spend a chunk of time worrying about, what the next climate issue is going to be. So lots of meetings, preparedness efforts, coordinating with different agencies and community to be better prepared for the unique environment that we live in these days.
So it's the county office. So if I've got this right, Santa Cruz has 4 cities: Santa Cruz, Capitola, Watsonville, and Scotts Valley. Everything else is county. So you don't worry about those 4 cities, but you worry about everything from Año Nuevo to the Pajaro River.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the climate space, we work very, very closely with our city partners, Tiffany Wise West at the city of Santa Cruz and the city of Watsonville have done amazing work in the climate action and adaptation plan work that they've done. And climate knows no boundaries. So on the climate side of things, we certainly want to focus and collaborate and work together to leverage our collective needs, because as a small county, we can't access state and federal dollars in the same capacity if we don't work together. But certainly on the response side and disaster recovery side, those areas and preparedness side, my focus is on supporting our unincorporated county residents.
So let's now pivot to accessing those state and federal dollars, because Santa Cruz ended up as the lead story on like NBC or CNN and then the governor shows up, and then our elected representatives show up, and then the president shows up. Okay, and he got Marianne's chocolate chip ice cream on Air Force One, so which apparently was a hit. So it's good that
mint chocolate chip?
Yep. So Santa Cruz ice cream is now on the White House radar, and you wonder whether did a Secret Service agent have to eat it first just to. Is that a thing? I don't know. Okay, accessing state and federal dollars. Sorry to just digress as we do here on Bushwhackers. Oh, if you're just joining us, folks, we're talking with Dave Reid, who's in charge of a great team of 4 at the Santa Cruz County Office of Response, Recovery, and Resilience. This is KZSE Santa Cruz, the Bushwhackers Breakfast Club. I'm Dangerous Dan.
I'm Calamity Kyle.
I'm Chaos.
Okay, so back to accessing state and federal dollars. The storms hit. Then we had that absolute killer surf, not killer surf, not as in a good thing, but just a major surf on a high tide. And we had damage up and down the coast and Capitola. So this is Capitola City gets to, make it to the headlines. How do you, as the county, then pivot from that attention to helping our county access those state and federal dollars?
Yeah, so there's 2 legs to that effort. One is the individual assistance. So our office is coordinating with individuals out there trying to work through the FEMA process to access FEMA funds for individual needs. So damage to their home, flooding damage, if they were displaced and had to purchase hotels or things of that nature. We're trying to support folks getting those resources out of FEMA. And just for those who may be listening, they have till March 16th to sign up for FEMA disaster assistance. And we have a disaster recovery center at 701 Ocean Street and down in Watsonville at the city facility there, supporting folks to get the private dollars to support private property and private impacts. On the public side, our county and all of the cities are working closely with Cal OES, the California Office of Emergency Services, and FEMA in the beginning stages of rebuilding and removing debris. And what ends up happening is we foot that bill on the front end, and then the state and the federal government reimburse us. So for the first 60 days of the disaster, we're going to hopefully get 100% reimbursement of the expenditure that we did to keep roads open or repair roads and fix roads. And then it'll be kind of between the state and federal government, we hope to get about 93% of the money back that we have to spend, but there's a delay in that. So it puts a financial strain on our small county government to front those monies during a disaster. And with the frequency of these disasters and the delay in getting reimbursed by FEMA, it's a challenge.
So we've talked to our county supervisors individually many times over the years, and each one of them is responding to their constituents. Now, those constituents may be experiencing, challenges due to road closures, landslides, flooding. Does the county supervisor's staff bring that to the county employees like you and your team and say, we got a problem down on Redwood Road, can you help? And then you take it from there?
Yeah, we actually have individual meetings with the supervisors to make sure that we're up to speed on anything they're hearing from their constituents. And then constituents are also reaching directly out to our office and working directly with us on issues that come up.
One of our listeners texted in. By the way, if you have a question for Dave here, Dave Reid with the Santa Cruz County Office of Response, Recovery, and Resilience, you can text your question to 831-459-4036. And as long as we're paying attention, which is that's a big if, okay, we'll see it and we'll see if we can bring it to the discussion. So, Dave, one of our listeners texted in, well, if rebuilding Seacliff Beach is a dumb idea, how sustainable is the rail corridor? Talk about third rails in the county.
Well,
because there were trees. There was some eucalyptus trees down in I think Live Oak that took out part of a bridge, damaged a bridge on the rail. So there was some damage to the rail, but there was damage all over. But so I don't know. I field the question, Dave. It's yours.
Sure, I'll try. There's a lot there for sure. I think for my office on the third R, resilience, diversifying our transportation options and decarbonizing our transportation is a critical element to addressing climate change and meeting the goals of the state in the 2030 and 2045 reduction targets for carbon emissions at the jurisdictional level. So it's important to have carbon-free transportation options for all residents, and hopefully a train would have a carbon-free solution and be available as a public transportation option for all residents. So from my perspective, that's the avenue that the trail and the rail play in our climate resilience strategies.
Okay, that's the resilience. I guess the response is what? You got to repair the damage.
Yep. I mean, we have the county alone, unincorporated county has over $50 million in damage from the storm to public infrastructure, roads, bridges, culverts, sanitation infrastructure in our parks. So it's not uncommon. The Regional Transportation Commission, which kind of manages the rail corridor, has damage that they're going to be seeking FEMA reimbursement for. So it's not uncommon in a disaster to have damage to public infrastructure.
Okay, so you've touched on resilience. We've talked about response. The recovery is getting somebody else to pay for it.
That's the hard part, really. I mean, candidly, between the CZU recovery and this recovery, insurance doesn't cover what people need. And that's a real tragedy. Everybody feels like their homeowner's insurance should protect them from disasters. And what we found, especially in the CZU recovery space, is that the insurance level was not high enough to meet the expensive cost of reconstruction and all of the requirements of rebuilding. And so folks don't have the money. A lot of folks don't have the adequate funds to rebuild after disasters these days, and that's heartbreaking.
Well, it gets worse, as we discussed during the CZU fires, because the way the insurance industry works. Your insurance company, let's say you're with Allstate is reinsured by these bazillion-dollar companies that are based in Bermuda that basically insure all the insurers. And when the reinsurers looked at the fires in California, including the CZU fire, they just shrugged their shoulders and said, okay, we're not going to reinsure California insurance anymore. And so Bonnie and I, we knew it was going to happen. Sure enough, we got dropped by our insurance company, the company that you've given, zillions of dollars to every year. And we had to go with California Fair, the insurer of last resort, which is a fraction of the previous coverage at more than twice the price. And so it's grim. And so we talked to our elected officials and said, if Santa Cruz County can join with SLO County and have our own utility, why can't we have our own insurance? And we cover ourselves. And Bruce McPherson was, had one of the best and lengthiest replies saying, Dan, it's just really complicated, and that's a lot of money. So, Dave Reid, next time you have Governor Newsom visiting, you could say, hey, Gov, about this insurance problem, look at all these businesses in Capitola. Do you think that they're going to have insurance from the same companies they have insurance for now in 2 years? And the answer is no. And so the problem goes deeper. And I think, you've got the Office of Response, Recovery, and Resilience. At some point, we've got to deal with the insurance issue.
Absolutely. It's a challenge for sure. I mean, I think people right now, The tragedy is that some folks, between windfall, trees falling through their house, or landslides impacting their homes, they're afraid to file an insurance claim to try and repair from this latest disaster because they're worried they'll get dropped come fire season. So it's, it puts community in a really hard place.
So we hit something with the rail trail. It definitely strikes a nerve. The person who asked the question earlier said, thanks for answering, but can you actually say whether or not the physical rail bed is sustainable? As the other geologist in the room, I'll tell you that rail bed has been here for 140 years. Okay. It may have issues and it may need to be repaired from time to time, but on the scale of the lifetime of the city of Santa Cruz, I would say, yes, it is sustainable. No qualifiers, no if, ands, or buts. Gentleman Jim says, good answer, Dave. Protect the rail trail. The voters have spoken. Again, that's Gentleman Jim chiming in. So we've talked about your average day. We've talked about dealing with, the disasters we've had, storms, landslides, fires, and whatnot. Looking ahead with climate change, do you have a map that you've kind of colored green, yellow, and red with parts of the county that are definitely going to be impacted and that we're going to have to consider basically abandoning, and ones that might be in danger, and the rest of the folks, living up in the mountains who don't have to worry about rising sea levels?
Well, I think unfortunately we're a poster child for climate change impacts. To some degree, depending on what lens you look through, everybody in our county is potentially impacted by climate change to one degree or another. Obviously our rural mountain residents have wildfire and landslide and intense rainfall risks. Our coastal residents have, sea level rise related things. And then those that live in low-lying river areas, as we experience this year, are subject to flooding. So there's probably a small place in Santa Cruz City. There's a small Live Oak area, maybe a little bit in Aptos, that are free from most of those harms. But
that's right, 3 blocks behind New Leaf.
Yeah, exactly.
But the rest, the impacts are going to be felt by everybody everywhere.
Yeah, I think the important thing to recognize is that we have to work at this collectively because the impacts are felt everywhere. Really, if you remember in probably June, July, August of 2020, before our fire, we had terrible air quality, right? And that air quality was from wildfires in the North Bay or in Oregon, right? So, our air quality, which can affect folks with respiratory issues, can be impacted by things way outside of our region. And so it's something that we have to work on together.
If you're just joining us, folks, we're talking with Dave Reid, who's head of the Santa Cruz County Office of Response, Recovery, and Resilience. Dave, where can people go to look up Tatiana's report on climate adaptation?
Yeah, so our county Office of Response, Recovery, and Resilience website, you can navigate that through the county's homepage. We've got the 3 R's. We call ourselves OR3 for short. I appreciate that you've nailed all 3 R's every time. You're a professional, of course. But they can go to our website under the Resilience tab. We have an amazing, what we call a story map. And it's an interactive engagement with the content, with climate change related issues. And really between Tatiana and our consultant team and our county family of support in developing that plan. That document lives in a very unique way on our website. So we really encourage people to interact with that story map.
Okay, you mentioned earlier that you work with the cities and you call out Tiffany in Santa Cruz. Eric writes in, Sea Cliff is a state park. I don't think the county has jurisdiction. So given all the parks that we have in our area, how do you interact with them in terms of response, recovery, and resilience?
Yeah, I think we have some amazing coastal parks. We have the oldest state park, that big basin that basically burned to the ground. We, as a state agency, they work directly with state partners to do their cleanup work. So we don't do a lot with them in terms of logistics, but certainly how our community interacts with the parks is a big part of our culture here. So I think a lot of people are going to miss the Sea Cliff Pier. I used to be a state lifeguard back in the day, and I used to teach junior guards right next to that pier. So I know it well. So they're going to miss that. And, we're going to adjust. We have to adjust, right? The big basin looks different now than it did before. And they'll be rebuilding that over the next decade. But it's a journey for all of us.
When people have questions, how do they reach out to you and your office?
You can, our contact information is on our website, so you can email me. My email is on there, and my staff's email is on there as well. If you have questions, and you can go ahead and reach out.
Eric texts in terms of rebuilding the wall, that's a state decision. Yes, but the county has input, and the county can bring attention to things that are a good idea or a dumb idea, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have as much input on the state's infrastructure, certainly private property infrastructure, and then the county. The biggest coastal project we've done in the last decade was the creation of the East Cliff wall, in Pleasure Point area between Pleasure Point and the Hook. That was a county redevelopment agency project, coastal protection structure. And really, in my mind, is the model type of structure that we should probably have in certain locations along our coastal bluffs areas, because if sea level rise occurs as we fear it may, it will drown a lot of our beaches, and then coastal access will be impacted. But if we can place limited coastal protection structures to preserve coastal access in those worst case scenarios, that may be the way that we have to go. But I know that's a big point of topic with the Coastal Commission for sure.
So which beach do you think is the one that's sort of done well in terms of not dumb money and will last for some time and actually serves the purpose that it's designed for?
Yeah, so there's a coastal seawall protection structure between Pleasure Point, so it's like 32nd ish, between 32nd and 41st. That vertical wall was sculpted to kind of look natural, and over the years, as moss and other things have grown on it, it looks a little bit more natural. But what it did was integrate coastal access, stairs and access to the beach or to the surf in a much more safe way. Back when I was in college, you had to scramble down
those rocks.
Yeah, exactly. You had to hop a little wood fence and scramble. And so it made it really hard for everybody to get down to the beach when there is a beach down there. When there's low tide, it's a great tide pooling place. I bring my kids down there, but that structure makes it much safer for folks to access the coast.
So maybe there aren't that many beaches, as it were, on West Cliff. Maybe we don't have to worry about the integrated beach access, but maybe the city could use that as a model to look at how to build and then protect West Cliff.
Possibly, yeah.
Indeed. Well, this has been an interesting conversation with Dave Reid, head of Santa Cruz County Office of Response, Recovery, and Resilience. You want to make us legal, Kaos?
At KZSC Santa Cruz.
It's the Bushwhackers Breakfast Club. I'm Dangerous Dan.
I'm Calamity Kyle.
I'm Kaos.
We've got the KPFA Morning News headlines coming up here in a couple of minutes. But Dave Reid, we'll give you a chance for kind of the last word. Given the fact that you're, a county employee and you guys are helping spend our tax dollars, what do you want? What do you think our, the people who are paying the bills, us, the taxpayers, need to know or don't know about, or fun facts, or, just random something of our area that you'd like people to be aware of?
Oh, wow. There's a lot there. I mean, the first thing I want to mention for those folks that aren't aware, to sign up for Code Red. That's the way that we notify folks in a disaster or an emergency. So you can go to Santa Cruz Regional 911.org or SCR911.org and sign up for Code Red. That way we can let you know if there's a problem in your community or in your neighborhood related to climate, related to disaster. So not everybody's signed up for that. Not everybody gets that information. But trying to leave on a high. I think we have an inspired community that is passionate about the environment, and I hope that we can work together, and I know we can work together to make a difference, to make things better for the future.
Hear, hear. Sign up for Code Red. We can use those calls to action. We can. Sign up for Code Red as we stare into the future here. Dave Reid, thank you so much for joining us here live in the studio at KZSC and the Bushwhackers Breakfast Club.
Thank you.
You've been listening to a podcast from an interview on the Bushwhackers Breakfast Club on KZSC 88.1 FM in Santa Cruz, California. This interview has been produced by myself, Dangerous Dan Orange. Groovy Gabe Orange helped get this interview into podcast format. KZSC is a student-run college and community non-commercial educational radio station broadcasting from the UC Santa Cruz campus. You can stream KZSC online at kzsc.org. Thanks for listening.